some of the issues that she raises in the interview, matters of concern. So let's have a look.
Shane was 23, he returned from college and he was to take part in a triathlon, and after having something to eat he went out on his bike. Beautiful summer's evening on the 2nd of August 2011. When he hadn't returned, Jim, my husband, and I went out and found that he'd been killed in a hit and run. He was our only son, our lives have been destroyed, but he was tossed on the road and left to die alone on the road in a hit and run. We were told it was a crime scene. They had nobody at the time for it. And
you were told that he was carried on the roof of a car for quite a distance?
That subsequently came out in the court because they found fabrics of his clothing on the roof bonnet and windscreen of the car.
Right. And the person who almost certainly was involved in this was a Lithuanian, and he had a track record prior to then. Tell us a bit about that.
He had come into the country, apparently he was known to Interpol. He was up for convictions for aggravated burglary, theft, road traffic offences, damage to property.
That was outside the country before coming here.
Yes, right. And then he had 40 convictions in total on the evening of the 2nd of August when he killed Shane.
That was in Ireland?
No, with Lithuania, Northern Ireland, and here.
Right, yeah.
He was well known to the PSNI. He had served custody in the south of Ireland for heroin. He had a long criminal history. He was on a peace bond. He was on a suspended sentence north and south of the border. He was driving a defective vehicle. He was uninsured. He had falsified his documents since coming into the country.
Wasn't there an instance where he was given a suspended sentence subject to good behaviour, and then he was convicted of another offence, and the judge in the second case was unaware of what had happened previously?
That's
the
right.
Gardai had failed to tell him.
Well, the reason Shane is dead is because total Garda failure. In January 2011, 7 months before Shane was killed, this man had received a 12-month sentence, and it was adjourned for a year in the Circuit Court for him to be of good behaviour, with permission to bring him back at any stage if he re-offended. But 4 months after that decision in the Circuit Court, and I saw that order, he was up for 5 consecutive days of theft in another courtroom, and the judge was unaware of that he was to be brought back and gave him a 4-month suspended sentence. The guards should have brought him back when he re-offended. So he now in May had got a 4-month suspended sentence and went on to kill our son. He legally shouldn't have been on the roads.
Right. And subsequent to the killing of your son, there were further bizarre developments.
Yes, there was plenty of opportunities for the guards to prevent this happening. On the 6th of July, 3 weeks before he killed Shane, this car was pulled up by the drug squad. He was well known to them, and he was found with the substance in charge, tinfoil. Apparently this man snorted his heroin. He would put a lighter under the tinfoil and he snorted his heroin, and instead of confiscating the car, seizing the car and preventing him driving, this man was allowed to continue to drive and hold a driving licence, which a person snorting heroin and having behind the steering wheel of a car is not conducive, because it's side effects of heroin.
Okay. And in the hours before the incident that resulting in the death of your son, the Gardai were also involved.
He was pulled up again an hour before he killed our son because the number was known to the drug squad. He was found in with 2 other Lithuanian heroin addicts. The driver was uninsured. They took them out and searched them. This car had no NCT certificate, driven by an uninsured driver, and they were waved on. Within an hour, our son was dead.
Subsequent to the death of your son, there were further bizarre twists to the story.
Following killing Shane,
yeah.
yes. Well, when this man killed Shane, he never touched the brakes. He fled the scene. He concealed the car in bushes 5 kilometres away. He returned to his Lithuanian wife and informed her, this is signed on oath, I'm after knocking someone down, I don't know who. And they both went to bed. Nobody called an ambulance, because if she had called an ambulance, he would have been tested within 3 hours for drugs and alcohol. And there's a 3-hour window there. So she went to bed. No charges were ever brought for her for failing to call an ambulance, withholding information. If we lived in Northern Ireland, that is 18 hours, but we only have 3 here. While we're preparing a funeral for our only son, there's a special sitting in Dundalk Court. And at that sitting, the guards failed to ask for the suspended sentence to be activated. He was on a 4-month suspended sentence 3 months earlier.
He was charged again in connection with the incident involving the death of your son.
There was 2 days following killing our son, there's a special sitting in Dundalk Court
was this
for this man.
This related to that issue or to another issue?
No, to killing my son. Right, he was taken to a special sitting in Dundalk Court. Yeah. And at that court sitting, the guards failed to ask for the suspended sentence he was on 3 months earlier in May. He got this 4-month suspended sentence. They failed to ask to have that activated. I mean, what do you have to do to get a suspended sentence activated? He was after killing. Surely they would say, we want to get the suspended sentence activated. They failed to bring that to the judge's attention. And they also failed to object to bail. He was after killing, and bail should have been objected to. So they didn't do that. So this man was out and about. But 2 weeks after killing Shane, he's caught with heroin again. A month after killing Shane, he's driving around again uninsured, no tax. And 6 weeks after killing Shane, he's supposed to sign on. The judge said, while this Gardai are preparing a big file for the DPP, this man, as ordered by the court when he killed Shane, was to sign in the Garda station 3 times a week and bail of €500. 6 weeks after killing Shane, while on bail for killing him, this man is arrested in Craigavon and spends 2 weeks in custody there. And nobody notices it when he fails to turn up in the Garda station and sign on for 2 weeks. In fact, that only came to light a year later when the family requested an Interpol check. And I had a conversation with the constable. I said, Constable, that's impossible that you had him for 2 weeks. And he said, Miss O'Farrell, why are you so sure? I said, he was signing in the Garda station. He killed my son. He was signing 3 times a week. He said, well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we had him here for 2 weeks. And so I was wrong, Vincent. We asked the DPP later, before it had gone to court, to object to him getting bail again in view on grounds that he had left the jurisdiction, which is very serious, and no one had noticed, and he was coming back to the same Garda station that failed to monitor him, but they refused. To highlight this to the judge would be to show that the guards had failed in their duty.
He was never convicted of dangerous driving causing death. He was convicted merely of leaving the scene of an accident.
The summary offences, yes. Yeah. Failing to remain at the scene, failing to call the services, and failing to keep his vehicle at the scene, and driving a defective vehicle.
How do you feel about the Garda conduct in relation to this whole affair?
My son is dead because of them. We've irrefutable evidence to that. We wouldn't be having this conversation now. There was gross misconduct and corruption following it to mop up, to cover up.
We're joined by David Norris, Trinity Senator, Jim O'Doherty, freelance journalist who has written about this story, and also John McGuinness, who's chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee. David, what do you think of that story?
Well, I think it's appalling, and I've known about it for the last couple of years because Shane's family were in touch with me, and I think we just had a very good, clear recital by Lucia O'Farrell, who is a wonderful woman herself, of the case. And it clearly does show that there has been malfeasance. I mean, his sister Gemma has managed to actually effect a change in the law with regard to people leaving the scene of an accident. But I think this really merits a public inquiry because this man, Zygmantas Grzyska, he was sentenced, as she said, to 12 months imprisonment, conditional on good behaviour. 4 months later, he was up before a court again, and the guards failed in their duty, which was to properly and accurately record, to inform the judge and to put it on the pulse system. So he was out again.
Of the previous conviction. Yeah.
So there were and then in July, he was found and pulled in by the drugs because he was a heroin addict, the drug squad, at the side of the road. And they found him in possession of tinfoil which had traces of heroin. Heroin was confirmed subsequently. The day that he died, there was a third opportunity for the guards to prevent this grotesque tragedy when he was again pulled in by the drugs squad, and as Lucia said, in company of 2 other heroin addicts, known heroin addicts. The car was unfit to drive. A PSNI officer said that it was dangerous to allow it on the roads. There was no tax, there was no insurance, and there was no national car test. I mean, it is just unbelievable that this should happen. And it would take all night if we go through the entire thing. But the family have done a remarkable job. Yeah. And there are 27 admissible allegations or complaints made to GSOC. It doesn't mean that they're justified, but it means they've been admitted
this has been referred to GSOC. Gemma, you've written about it. What do you think of this?
Well, I've come across many, many devastating cases of Garda misconduct, but in my opinion, this is the most heartbreaking. And what is so tragic about this case is that this family have been left to find the answers for themselves. Nobody was there to help them. Everything that you heard in that interview tonight is down to that family, Lucia and Jim O'Farrell, and their 4 wonderful daughters, one of whom, Gemma O'Farrell, has saved lives herself by getting the law in this country changed so that people who do leave the scene of a fatal accident now get 10 years as opposed to the 6 months that they got when the accused killed Shane's life. And I think the person at the centre of this tonight, Shane O'Farrell, must be remembered. A few days before he was killed, he handed in his thesis for his Masters in Law in Trinity College. He had a wonderful legal future ahead of him. He was particularly interested in human rights, and his mum always says to me that he used to say that you are guilty of the wrong that you do, but you're also guilty of the good that you do not do. And little did that young man know how the state would turn its back on him and his constitutional rights and his family. And they are crying out for justice. Minister Shatter can overnight arrange a commission of inquiry into the taping of conversations of Garda stations. This family also need a commission of investigation immediately.